you go into archives, you go into libraries, you're looking for scholarly work around African identities and geographies linked to the ocean. The African maritime imaginary, how can it be absent? What happened? Where did the loss take place and why? Okay, so when you ask about the African imaginary, you tended to be led to the Black Atlantic, look to the Black Atlantic. But then the third part, I know idiotic is not necessarily an academic word, but it was necessary to put it there. The persistent and idiotic drop of African engagement with the ocean, restricted to that of cargo on other people's ships as slaves. No matter, one of the things we did when I was working in Zanzibar was we brought in the CD Goma group. They're Gujarat-based Africans. Though they're Indian and have Indian characteristics and speak Gujarati, they are, literally when they came to the coast, when they came to Zanzibar, people thought they were Zanzibaris, completely Zanzibari. But in the telling, and it was a very emotional return to East Africa for the generations that came. Their performance group, what was very interesting in sitting down to talk to them, every single one of them said that when their great-great-great-grandfathers left the East African coast, they left as navigators, as traders, as scholars who settled in India. The conversation around the CD Goma and the CD right now is that they are all slaves. And the space when we introduce this, this conversation, the possibility of that, the dimensionality of African movement through the centuries along this whole area, and not necessarily as cargo on other people's ships. Again, it was fascinating to keep running into that wall, that thing of, but where's the evidence, where's the evidence? Even if the evidence is before you. The privileging of other people's narratives about a situation rather than the memory and the ideas of self that the others offered at the table at the time. Next thing was the paucity of studies in, yes. Every time you read stories of the sea, very rarely do you encounter women as protagonists of those particular journeys. Again, I was interested, especially since you had the evidence of new generations being formed all along the ports and places of the Indian Ocean, with children who remain dark and beautiful. Obviously, some women must have traveled. Number one, but secondly, when you have stories of female traders, it's again fascinating to find how the narrative of women and the sea completely not just disappeared. It was the assumption. The assumption is that women do not engage with the sea. But also more importantly for us, I jumped again and cut off a lot of things. Given the return of China to the East African coast, and I use the word deliberately, return, I've always been curious about the shyness, perhaps, of our own African engagement with what this particularly means. Next. So in order to tackle this, a couple of things. I had to resign my job and run away for myself. I went off to Australia. They offered me an MPhil there and gave me a chance to do two things. A critical essay, which was Imagined Ocean, which allowed me to indulge my question around the poem maps of the sea, and of course the creative program, project, which was started off as Dragonfly Monsoon, and somebody said, that sounds too Indian, and said, so it became Dragonfly Sea. So let me introduce you to some of the characters in the story, some of whom you've met. The dragonflies, actually, I wanted to ask you what's the longest insect migration across the Indian Ocean, but the answer is right there. The dragonflies. But again, when you start to ask about the Serengeti, when you ask about the dragonfly on the Indian Ocean, they come around October. They come in the time of the short rains. So they are so associated with good luck, with abundance, with great portents. And the arrival is timed, and there are a lot of things that are built around the arrival of the dragonflies. But again, as Pinky was telling us about the dung beetle, it's the combination of the wind. They come in at the time of the in-between wind. It's called the Matlai wind. the wind that is the precursor before the next big monsoon winds come. And there are ceremonies and songs linked to the arrival of the dragonflies, but it's not as if you can hear them too easily. The next character is this man, Haji Gora Haji. If you haven't heard about him, please take his name down now. Is the finest poet of East Africa, the best sea poet that we have, but we rarely ever, not only as a people. It's very interesting, when I introduce him, try to introduce him as a sea poet, that same resistance I was telling you about, that you encounter among Indian Ocean scholars, you run into it again. As if the skin, the black skin associated with the ocean has to be, kept at bay. I'm not judging anybody, I'm just curious about that particular resistance. Anyway, Haji Gora Haji became my primary interlocutor around the poem maps, but more than that, he inspired a character that enters the story called Muhyiddin. Next character. This man is very important, certainly for East Africa. Do we all know, at least, do we all know about Admiral Jean Ho? Do we? Show of hands. You know why this is so terrifying, your silence? He's the reason why China is back. This man used to have, he was the great Chinese admiral who traveled with 30,000 people on Chinese yonks, the ships that were actually cities. And all he needed to do was show up at a port. He didn't colonize, he just said, we are here, and if you don't give us tribute on a regular basis, we shall invade you. So lots of people gave tribute on a regular basis, and that included the 2 giraffes that ended up in the Forbidden City in China from East Africa. He also traveled to the Forbidden City with not quite the sultans, they were the kings of Malindi and Mombasa. But he is also important in that in his final voyage, the 7th voyage, when they were leaving East Africa, oh, by the way, just for the East Africans, just to spook you out a little, Wasini, that used to be a Chinese harbor, that is where his ships used to dock. The town, I'll tell you about the town in Shanga. Malindi, there were places where his ships used to dock. The reason you have Chinese ceramics all along the coast was because of this man, right? When China ruled the seas, I'm sure you've read the book, When China Ruled the Seas, it's around this man. Fascinating thing is, he was also a Muslim. He had gained access to the Indian Ocean in the time of his father when they used to go for Hajj, but his father was a trader, Persian trader, who also traversed the Indian Ocean. Something happened, he lost his family, he was made a eunuch, a very tall man. He ended up as a friend of the king and therefore became one of the dominant men of that particular time. But when the monarchy changed in China, that was when China turned its back on the sea. And this man, they pretended he did not exist for about 500 years. But when China decided to face the sea again, if we had read our history, we should have been very nervous because they revived him. And suddenly there were all these Zhong Hong memorials, memories of the 7 voyages. But let me talk about the 7th voyage, which was his last voyage. They were leaving East Africa, the ship running, their ships, but they used to travel with many ships. So some of them went ahead, but a whole number of them were shipwrecked. It is this, a few of the sailors that survived the shipwreck came to Pate Island. Now, Pate Islanders have been saying for years and years that some of us are Chinese. Some of us are descendants of the Chinese. There are also Chinese tombs on the island, but actually historians say no, it's not really real. It's not really real. Anyway, so this man links us directly to the next character, who inspires the character of Ayan in this book. This is Mwamaka Sharifu. Do some of you know her story? Yeah. In 2005, she was sent to China. She's from Pate Island. Chinese government sent people to take DNA and did establish that indeed there is Chinese DNA. And so she was taken to China and feted as, if you want, the return of the lost Chinese. And she went there and studied Chinese medicine, and they were fascinated by her look. So in my story, in Dragonfly Sea, it is not Mwamaka's Sharifu's story. I want to lay that out because I take my character through a lot of terrible things. Mwamaka, but she absolutely inspired the idea. So in the Dragonfly Sea, the little girl you met, Ariane, is an illegitimate child, a daughter of a woman. But her fortunes change when through her DNA, she's asked then to go to China. Just a side story with Mwamaka. When Mwamaka was leaving, there's an article, just next one. She's so proud. She says she's looking forward to. I'm not going to force you to read it in it, but she says, she's really looking forward to connect with her Chinese family and descendants and everything. She was there for 4 years. By the time she came back, she was adamantly, virulently, and absolutely Kenyan. Yeah. So the final character that I introduced in the story. I love the work of the Zhao Wu. He was China-born but French, one of the most profound abstract painters. I incorporate a lot of his work in the story that becomes the Dragonfly Sea. Next. Okay. This was the I also used the poetry from Pate Island, Mwana Kupona Musham, and that was what Mushai recited at the beginning. Okay. So, anyway, I don't know why I put that there. Actually, I put that there just so that you could get annoyed with me as well. Can you believe that the Arabs, the Portuguese, and the Indians say that they're the ones who create the dhow? I tell them, show me your dhow guides. They don't have them. They're all here on the East African coast. But actually, when I'm talking about spaces of contestation, the reason why that would be contested is simply this. Actually, if we had more time, I'd force you to think through it, but I'll give you the short version of the answer. The moment you say that a culture and a people have got the technology, the know-how, and the navigational skills to traverse the seas, to trade, to encounter, and they have the knowledge to build seafaring vessels, not only for trade, but for war, for creating war vessels. These were all done in the island of Pate. Pate was actually a major center of not just the entire Indian Ocean realm. It was a place where you went to shop for your goods. But the erasure, the total erasure of that I wouldn't say total, I'm lying when I say total. The erasure is in history books. But when you go to the ground, the histories are there in the genealogies, in the remnants, in the vestiges of the dhow building, boat building sites. But tell that to the Indians or to the Arabs, and even to the Portuguese. They will say that they are the people who originated the dhow. The word dhow, D-A-U, is actually a Swahili word, by the way. Just so that you know. If anybody should come and say, we made the dhow, you say, no, you didn't. But yeah, so I think that kind of does it. So the whole mix of all that then took me to Lamu, led me to conversations, allowed me, I wanted to ask about what does rather than the bigger history of China's return to Africa, what does it mean? I was